Hello everyone, Jacquie Edwards here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited. We're kicking off into May. We are still deep in coronavirus world, and coronavirus hair is a thing. I am dying to meet my hairdresser. But anyways, today I want to talk about our Goldmine area. Now this topic is relevant no matter where you are, no matter when you're watching this video. This is a super important topic that I get so many questions on. So I want to give you 3 things to look for in your gold mine area. Now we're going to talk about distance, area knowledge, and does your tenant want to live there? So these are kind of the key 3 things. The first 2 are reasonably related because, yeah, we'll show you why as I go through it. So the first one is distance. Now I am constantly asked, and London is a big one. So people are like, oh my God, I live in London. I can't do rent to rent in London because any of 8,000 different reasons. It's too expensive. There's too many people already operating here. Oh my gosh, there's millions of reasons why you can't do rent to rent in London. Now that is totally a mindset issue on your part. Whether you're in London and you think you can't do rent to rent, or you're in Nottingham, or you're in Manchester, or wherever you are and you think you can't do rent to rent in your area, that's a mindset issue. Because like London, I know dozens and dozens and dozens of people that are doing rent to rent successfully in London. Pretty much any decent sized city that you think you can't do rent to rent in, I can show you people that are doing rent to rent there. Before I started rent to rent in Oxford, like everybody said, oh, you can't do rent to rent in Oxford. You can't do HMOs in Oxford. It's too expensive. They've got Article 4. They've got too many rules. And, I set up my business there. And the reason I chose Oxford and the reason I am suggesting you stick in your local area is because of distance. You should be working as close to home as possible. The only other option is if you maybe work somewhere else and you spend a lot of time where you work, then maybe you could consider setting up your rent to rent business where you work. But otherwise, you should be setting up your rent to rent business as close to home as possible. Because the more time you spend traveling back and forth, the less time you have for actually getting deals and making money. Because you're not making money when you're sitting on the train or driving your car. Now, sure, people are like, oh, but I could listen to this really great audiobook or take this really great training program, while I'm driving or sitting on the train, and I'll learn so much and my time will be really productive. It's not as productive as it would be if you weren't traveling in the car for 2 hours. If you just popped around the corner and did 20 viewings in that 2 hours that you just spent driving and listening to an audiobook. And just think, when you actually get a property up and running and you have to constantly drive back and forth to, manage a refurb, to find those first tenants, all of that just takes extra time and effort. And you don't need to be spending that extra time and effort traveling. It's not a value add when you could just do rent to rent around the corner right where you are. It's not a good use of your time. And people will be like, that's okay, I don't mind traveling, I love traveling, love driving in the car. You might love it, but it's not making you money. You are not making money when you are sitting in your car. You might even be making phone calls and think that's making you money, but it's not. You are making money when you are out doing viewings and when you are making offers. When you are sitting in the car, you are not doing viewings. Even if you're driving to one, you could have been doing, 5 viewings in the time that it took you to drive somewhere. And you are probably not making offers because I can't imagine, driving around the M25 or any motorway anywhere is a conducive place to be making offers. So if you're making offers while you're driving in your car or while you're sitting in the train, that's probably not the best place to do it. You should be somewhere like quiet where you can give all of your focus and attention. So I'm going to say pretty much any argument you give me for why it's better for you to invest somewhere else than where you are now, it's a mindset issue. And you have a thought and a belief that you think is a fact, and it is not a fact. And you are holding yourself back with that belief and with that thought. Instead of really saying, how can I invest in this area close to me? How can I make it work? And that will start opening up so much more opportunity to you. So, all right. The only other thing Another quick one is if you have an imminent move planned. So like if you're living in London and in like 2 months you're moving down to Bournemouth, then yeah, it's okay. You can probably start looking in Bournemouth and set your business up there. But if you think, someday, maybe 5, 10 years from now, I'd love to live by the seaside. So I'll set up my business by the seaside now. Yeah, that's probably not going to work. Because, someday, yay, in the future, maybe, is not going to help you get your business set up. And, if you do move down there to the seaside in 5 years and you've got your rent to rents, in London, it's okay because they'll have been up and running. You'll be systemized. You can leave them at that point. Whereas in the beginning, you're not systemized. You don't have all the contacts you need in that other city. You just don't want to be fighting the distance. It's hard enough to set up a new business. It takes you so far out of your comfort zone that you don't want to be spending all that time doing it in another area. Because that kind of leads on to the second point, is your area knowledge. Because you are going to know the area close to where you live better than you know anywhere else. So when you say, all right, well, I can't invest in London, I have to go to, Bournemouth or Oxford, you have to learn that area from scratch. So you have to figure out, where do people want to live here? Where are all the shops? How do the bus routes work? How does the transportation work? Do people cycle? Do they take the bus? How do they get to work? Where do people work? What companies are here? You're starting over from scratch. And you have to basically build up all of that knowledge. Whereas if you start in the area closest to you, you have all that knowledge. You know what companies are around. You know how people travel, what the bus routes are. I made a mistake early on in our investing. So after we had set up a few rent-to-rents, we wanted to start buying properties. So I had the thought that, it's too expensive to buy properties in Oxford. So we bought property in Swindon, an HMO in Swindon. And now I don't know Swindon at all. I just know Swindon's cheap. It's a good place to buy properties because Swindon is cheap. Those properties are a pain in the ass. So we've got 2 of them there. And I hate going to Swindon. I know nothing about Swindon. So in the very beginning, when we were getting set up, I was doing viewings with tenants and they'd be like, oh, where's the bus route? Oh, where's the shop? Luckily, I knew where the shop was because I could see it from the house. So it was on the corner there. I didn't know anything else that was in the area. I didn't know how to even get to the city center. I didn't know where the train station was. I knew there was a bus stop, but I had no idea where that bus stop went. I knew nothing about the area. So it was just a really, really big struggle to do anything, to kind of attract tenants and to make things work. I didn't know any handymen in the area, any electricians, plumbers. I didn't have any of those contacts. And it was just so much harder than if I just stuck with Oxford. So then we bought properties in Oxford and it's 100 times easier. I know everywhere in Oxford because I lived there. I knew the streets. I worked in the business park and that's where my key tenant works, is in that business park area. So I know the businesses there. I know their transportation routes to work. I know people love to cycle and I know where the cycle routes are. I know about Oxford and I know when a tenant comes to do a viewing, I can say, oh, you work there. Oh, it's just around the corner and there's a shortcut here. Or you can take this bus or all these different things. I can give them that information. And I know when it's a good deal or not, because I know the areas of Oxford. So I know, I shouldn't invest over in that area because a little bit dodgy and that's not where my ideal tenant wants to live. Whereas if I picked up and went to a completely different town, I wouldn't know that. And you wouldn't know that coming to Oxford if you don't know the area, because you're going to look, and Oxford's quite a small city. You're going to be like, oh, look at all these houses in Oxford and over there they're charging that much for rent. And yeah, they are. But that's going to take a lot longer to rent because people don't want to live there as much as they want to live over here. And so it's 100 times better to get that same investment and spend that same amount of money over here than it is over here. But you, the investor that's coming in from 2 hours away, you're going to take that crappy investment because you don't know any better. Because this is not your area, this is not your patch, and you haven't spent the time getting to know it. So make sure, if you get nothing else out of this video, that you are investing as close to home as possible. And that if you don't think you can do it, then you need to sit down and examine your own thoughts. Because most of that is going to be a thought problem on your side. It's going to be a belief issue. Because unless you live in a tiny village in a remote part of the world and you want to do HMOs, you're pretty much going to be okay. Most cities, most big towns have HMOs in them. Or again, if you're in a pretty small area, go to the nearest big city, one that you go to regularly. So again, for me, I live outside of Oxford. I did live in Oxford for a while, but I live outside of there. But I still, have to go to Oxford to go to the main shops. And so I still know where things are. I still know what's happening there because I have to go there regularly. So really focus on that. And now the third thing that you want to be looking at in your Goldmine area is, does your tenant want to live there? So you've got kind of two options. You can pick an area and then figure out who lives there and market to them. Or you can pick an ideal tenant. Like, do you want to have students in your houses, professionals? Do you want to have, blue collar workers? Do you want to have DSS tenants? Who is your ideal tenant? And then kind of find kind of where they want to live in your area. So again, you're not finding a whole new area, but in kind of every town, in every city, there's different pockets. So, if you want students, they're probably going to live around the college or the university. If you want professionals, they're going to live where there's easy access to where they go to work. So if you want to, have kind of the young professionals, so the mid to late 20s, they're going to want to be living somewhere where there's a little bit of a life, where there's restaurants and bars and things like that. So I suggest that you figure out who do you want to rent to, and then find the pockets of your area where they want to live and really focus in there. Because you might be able to get properties all over your area. But if your tenant might not want to live all over. And then all of a sudden you might have all these different types of tenants that you're trying to market to, because students are looking for things that are different than young professionals, are looking for different things than blue collar workers, than DSS tenants. They're all looking for different things and different styles and different amenities in their houses. To make your business as easy as possible, you want to kind of have a standard. So all your houses might look different and be, have a different floor plan and stuff, but you want to have, the same kind of, I use this furniture pack and I buy this type of cutlery and my pictures look like this and my ads look like this, so that everything is easy and repeatable so that you can set up those systems to scale your business. So the more you're able to focus in on kind of one type of tenant, the easier it's going to be. And the more you focus on where does that tenant want to live, what are they really looking for, and then narrow that down as your Goldmine area. So that way you are super laser focused. So make sure you're investing close to home, and make sure that you know that area well, which you will because it's close to home, and make sure that you really understand your ideal tenant and where they want to live within that kind of broader area. So the more you focus on that, the easier it's going to be to find a deal. You're not going to be running around all over the place, wasting time, driving here and there. And I know this from experience. In the beginning, I wasted my time driving anywhere. I said, I'll invest anywhere within 2 hours of my house. And yeah, that first 6 months, I spent all my time driving anywhere within 2 hours of my house, looking at properties. I had no idea about the area or anything I was looking at. And I ended up with no deals. It wasn't until I sat back and I said, okay, I know Oxford. I'm going to invest in Oxford. This is my Goldmine area. I know the tenants here. I know the area. I know where they want to go. I know where they want to be. I know what houses are, or what streets are good, which ones are bad. And once I focused in on that, that's when my business blew up. That's when things started to happen. And I want that to happen for you. So, takeaways, just follow the plan, invest close to home, and you will get there. All right. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.